3, 2, 1, blast off. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the MSP Chat Podcast. Your weekly visit was two talking heads talking with you about the services, strategies, and success tips you need to make it big in managed services. My name is Rich Freeman. I'm Chief Analyst at Channel Mastered, the organization responsible for this show. I'm joined side by side, physically and in person this week, by your other co-host, our CEO and Chief Strategist. His name is Erick Simpson. Erick, you tell me, where are we?
We are in Baltimore, Maryland, Rich, at Ingram 1 2025.
Yes, indeed we are. And we're going to dive right in to the story of the week, which will be coming out of this show. But tell folks a little bit about the show and what's been going on here.
Well, Rich, it's been a jam-packed couple of days, morning to night, with lots of meetings, lots of presentations, lots of sessions by Ingram, introducing some great new services for partners, their growth strategies, and ways for that Ingram can help their partners grow and compete in the evolving economy.
Now, I will preview this for folks here. One of the things we did yesterday at the show was record not one but two interviews with Ingram executives, Jennifer Anaya, who is essentially their global head of marketing, and Cheryl Rang, who runs the technology solutions organization. The video for those interviews is not going to be available for us in time for us to give you those interviews during the episode that you are listening to or watching right now. They are coming up in a future episode of the show. So we will be revisiting the Ingram Micro One conference an episode or two from now. But we do have a very good interview for you coming up on the show that Erick and I will be recording a day or two from now at the IT Nation Connect event that we are also going to be attending. So this is the first, basically, of multiple Road Warrior editions of the MSP Chat podcast.
I love that. The Road Warrior edition.
Well, let's dive into our story of the week here. And I'll just tell the audience right out. We are at the show. The show is happening right now. So you are getting this about as raw as it can be gotten. I am kind of working through for Channelholic, my blog, my thoughts about what's been happening at this show and its significance. Let me try to set it up for you this way. We know we're in the era of AI, and we know we are on the cusp of the era of agentic AI. Folks might remember back in June when Pax8 had its big conference and made its big announcement, which was essentially that they're going to be creating this agent marketplace. And their vision of the future and the role of a company, a distributor, a marketplace in the era of agentic AI is that partners are going to need not just what they needed before, the software and the hardware to deliver solutions. They're going to need agents because the solutions that end users want are going to combine hardware and software and agents. So Pax8 is building a marketplace where their partners can get all this stuff, basically weave it all together into a solution. Well, shortly before this show began, Ingram told folks like myself in the media what they were going to be announcing here. And one of the announcements was that they were going to be rolling out officially their first agent. And I assumed this was going to be the first step down that same kind of Pax8 road, that essentially Ingram sees a role for itself as a source of agents to vendors who are, or partners rather, who are going to be building agentic solutions. Not so much. And yet what they did announce here is indicative of where they see their differentiator coming. So they did announce an agent. It's called the Sales Briefing Assistant. Like everything else that they do, it's part of their Xvantage platform. It basically draws on this massive, and I was going to call it a data lake ocean, but Sanjeev Savu, who runs platforms for Ingram, called it a data ocean this morning during the presentation. 4 petabytes of data, massive amounts of data. And it's studying those data, that data. Right now, what it's doing is enable Ingram's own people to understand you as a partner well enough to see where your next solution is, where your next vendor relationship is, and kind of help you grow your business and help Ingram grow its business. At some point very soon, I was given the words very soon, they're going to release that agent for use by their partners to do essentially the same thing on their own. And what this is really pointing to is where Ingram sees its differentiation in the marketplace, the sophistication, the depth of its data, and especially of its AI. Um, in a sense, Eric, as I was interviewing Ingram executives that this show, what they were telling me is that distribution, as we know it, is kind of dead. Distribution, and the folks at PAX 8 would sign on to this probably as well. Distribution was born in the day when hardware and software came in boxes. It sat in a warehouse. You ordered it from the warehouse. You got some financing, and that's what you needed from a partner right at that point. What you need now, in an era where you can go direct to LLMs, you can go direct to vendors, you can go to direct to the hardware manufacturers. But what you really need is a company that has relationships with all of those different organizations and can help you aggregate and orchestrate all that stuff. Now, there are plenty of other distributors in the marketplace who have those same relationships. The thing that Ingram has and has been investing in now for 3 years and continues to invest in pretty heavily is both that data ocean and the AI that is taking advantage of it. And that is, they believe, is going to give them a much richer, more sophisticated way of helping you identify opportunities, build and grow your business. And it's difficult for me in my position to compare their data and their AI to what is available from other distributors and marketplaces out there. But I will simply say, as somebody who covers all of those companies, the sophistication, the amount of time, it's hard not to come away from any Ingram event I go to, any headquarters visit I do in Irvine, without really feeling like they are out there. They do have a bit of an advantage. They got started down this road earlier than some of the other companies out there. And what they're banking on is that the value of that investment is what's going to set them up for the next era of their business, which is a post-distribution era. They haven't settled on a word to describe exactly what they are, but they are perfectly comfortable telling me, we're not a distributor, we are a platform company, and it's going to be the platform, Xvantage, that people are partnering with, and that sets us apart.
So, Rich, what you're describing, the kind of the legacy distribution model that we are now claiming is dead. There's a term for it that I hear all the time. It was pick, pack, and ship, right? Pick, pack, and ship. You described it. So what's the new name for what we're seeing? Because the different platforms and marketplaces are doing it a little bit differently. Have we coined one yet, or is that something you and I have to put our heads together on?
Yeah, we'll have to do this for them, because I did actually ask Sanjeev Sahu, who's been on this show before back in the spring, what are you guys calling yourself? So you're telling me you're not a distributor,
right?
So what are you exactly? And he said, we haven't really settled in on a name. We're not fixated on the name. It's the idea that's more important to us. And so, I had kind of put aggregator out there. Orchestrator kind of comes up. It's all about the connections that they can facilitate for you and simplify for you and pull together. It's about the intelligence that they can wrap around those connections so that those connections actually become useful and profit generating for you. So yeah, I don't know what the word is, but I just feel like we need one.
It's a little bit of a hybrid of a couple of different kind of models that we're talking about on the show lately. So we'll put some thought to it, and maybe we'll introduce something soon. But yeah, we need a name for it.
It would make it easier, basically, if nothing else, for us to talk about on the podcast here. Well, Eric, we grabbed a moment's time here during a pause at the Ingram Micro One event. So you and I actually didn't get a chance to talk about what your tip of the week is, which means I get to learn the answer to that question along with our audience. What do you got?
Well, here it comes, raw. From conversations I'm having more and more with MSPs these days, Rich, about the way that they're structuring their agreements, and the old way of getting clients to sign up for longer term agreements, Rich, was basically to guarantee them a flat rate for a... You saw it here live, folks. That's exactly how it happens when
Packed house.
Yeah,
Packed house.
packed house here. And you probably hear a lot of background noise. But let me get back to the tip of the week. So, there was, and we did this as well, Rich, in our MSP. We said, well, if you sign on for 2 or 3 years, we will give you better pricing over that period of time. Well, guess what, Rich? That doesn't work anymore because customers expect there to be a flat fee that they pay for 3 years, while the rising costs of doing business for MSPs, the increased fees that they're paying for third-party services, the cost of labor is going up, heck, tariffs, you name it. All of this stuff is now creating this tremendous amount of pressure and stress for MSPs that are locked into these agreements and are having a hard time having an awkward conversations with the clients to get them to true up. So, a couple of thoughts. First of all, one way that we could address some of this stuff is to break our flat fee agreements into a flat fee for some specific services that we're going to do on the regular, and then a portion of it on consumption-based services. So if we're adding more licenses, if the cost of services go up or the consumption costs change, we can vary it that way. I'm not as cozy with that idea, Rich, as I am with just having a clause in your agreement that lets the client know that the agreement will be reviewed annually, no matter how long the term of the agreement is, to make necessary adjustments to make certain that we are covering the costs of delivering these services to clients. And that, Rich, takes a consultative sales approach, letting clients know that, hey, things that go beyond our control, like tariffs and things like that, raise all of our costs. I'm sure you, Mr. and Mrs. Client, also have to deal with rising costs and pass those on to your clients from time to time. We're just going to put a clause in here. Sometimes we can tie it to CPI, Rich. Sometimes we can tie it to not to exceed X% of the agreement. That still puts us at a little bit of a risk. I think the best approach is simply to let clients know that we're going to work together as a team and we're going to identify and come to an agreement as to what makes sense moving forward. And this is also one of the reasons why I like having 3 tiers of bundles of services that we deliver to clients, Rich, because now if a client says, you know what, that's a little bit too rich for our blood, if we have a lower tier of service that can deliver, exactly what the MSP feels every client should get when they sign up for them, we can have a conversation with clients that sounds like this. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Client, let's do this. Let's just move you into our lower tier of service for 90 days or so, and then we'll come back and revisit this, because my guess is those clients are going to feel the missing benefit of perhaps additional features or, Rich, a better SLA from a response time perspective for some of their services. But at least that gives the MSP and the client a better, more collaborative way to look at services as both of them doing their part to make sure that we both succeed in the changing economy.
So in the example you just provided, you suggest to the client, we're going to move you into this more affordable plan for 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
So to be clear, because one way to maybe do what you're talking about, and this might be exactly what you're talking about, is to essentially build the true up into the QBR.
Correct.
So once a quarter, we're going to have a strategic conversation and review about what we've been doing and what you need. We're going to adjust our prices. Maybe up, maybe down, depending on your requirements. What I like about that a lot, Eric, the thing that is potentially risky for the MSP, if they're making price adjustments a lot, is that it denies the end user some element of predictability and budgetability around what they're going to spend. But if you tell them, if it's just the way you do business, exactly the way most MSPs now are probably telling their clients somewhere in a master services agreement or so on, we adjust our prices once a year. We adjust our prices once a quarter at the same time, and that's just part of the plan. Mm-hmm. That becomes predictable. And the exact pricing adjustments, you can't talk about in advance, but you can very much, let them know that, like you said, we're going to come at this as a team and come up with an answer that works for you and works for us and so on. But there is that element of predictability in that they know every 90 days this is going to be part of our strategic conversation with you.
Yeah, I'd love to review comments, folks. So if you have some thoughts, post them in the comments and we'll respond. I think maybe 90 days might scare a few clients away that aren't quite as strategic or mature. There's always the guiding light for MSPs that says, oh, we want to have, A clients that are always growing and are strategic and we can have these conversations. But, the fact of the matter is, Rich, we have A clients, we have B clients, we have C, D, and F customers too. So I think having something in the agreement that allows a review, I think, a year annually might be comfortable. And that way, when you do true up, if you have to true up a lot, maybe you can catch up a little bit. I'm not sure if 90 days gives a business owner kind of a sense of, okay, enough predictability for them to say yes to it. But I'd love to hear the comments from our viewers, and let's respond appropriately.
Let me ask you this quickly before we move on. If I was an MSP considering what you're proposing here, and I said, I'm going to do the 90-day approach, but just to overcome that, hesitation, that the fear people might have about their prices going way up 90 days from when they sign the deal.
Right.
Can you potentially build something into agreement that says prices will go up to X percent?
Yeah.
Put a cap.
Put some guardrails around it. And that's kind of the idea around like an annual review. Sure, you can do a 90-day kind of not to exceed, but then, some clients might think, oh, well, you're just going to wait another 90 days and do another not to exceed and trim me up that way. I'm always thinking of how to minimize the argument and the friction. But, I'd love to see what partners, are trying out there, and maybe we can, do an update on this very thorny topic in an upcoming podcast episode.
So chime in, folks. Let's hear what you're thinking, what you're doing. If you have a different approach to this problem, if you are experiencing this problem but experimenting with an answer to it, we'd love to hear what you think. In the meantime, Eric and I are going to take a break. When we come back, we will magically be transported to Orlando, Florida, where we will be at the ConnectWise IT Nation Connect event for one of a few podcast interviews we're going to be recording there that you'll be enjoying on the show in coming weeks. Stick around. We will be right back with you in Florida momentarily. And welcome back to part 2 of this episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, our spotlight interview segment coming to you live from the ConnectWise IT Nation Connect event here in Orlando, Florida. As you can imagine, AI in managed services is very much on the agenda here at this event. So we are pleased to be joined by somebody whose entire business is built around that use case and the technology for addressing it. His name is Lee Silverstone, and he is from a startup named zofiQ.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
Welcome, Lee. We're excited to have you here because you know what? We haven't heard enough about AI this last year at all. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah, likewise.
So we've spoken once upon a time before.
Yes.
A lot of startup stories in managed services and even specifically in automation software for MSP. A lot of these stories begin with an MSP identifying a need, creating a tool for internal use, productizing it. That is not your story at all.
No.
So in the context of helping people in our audience get to know you, tell them a little bit about your background and how you wound up creating zofiQ.
Like you said, I don't come from the channel. I feel very fortunate that I found the space and that the channel has embraced us and taught me everything I know about the space. I come from a traditional software background. This is my third time building a software company. I built an education technology platform right out of university. I'm Canadian. And then I built an IoT machine learning company in the fitness vertical. So I built hardware and software to basically make gym equipment smart and push that data to the cloud right around the time of mobile becoming really big and wearables becoming really big. I then went and worked for a VC firm. I was doing early stage software investing based for a firm based in San Francisco and Los Angeles, primarily pre-seed, seed, Series A companies. And I'm a terrible VC. I love building product. I love working with people to solve problems. And so while I didn't come from the space, I spent about 18 months looking at different verticals to go build agentic AI solutions in. I feel very fortunate that I saw these very early versions of, at the time, not even called AI agents, but what AI was doing to software companies and what I thought it was going to do to services companies in particular. And I became enamored with that, and that's what I wanted to go do. And my co-founder and I started looking at in-house IT and building in the ServiceNow ecosystem. We met our third co-founder, Chris, who had helped build scale computing in Canada. He was a system architect, a countrywide system architect at CDW, and he said, "Have you guys ever heard about these things called MSPs?" And the rest was history. And I just started to reach out to MSPs on LinkedIn and ask for advice. And the welcoming nature of people in this space to talk to us, to teach us, to let us sit side by side and watch what they do on a daily basis was so refreshing to me, coming from other verticals, that I was completely enamored on day one. And it has been a 2.5-year journey that I have loved every step of the way since then.
It's an amazing community, right? So you're experiencing that. Before we move forward, though, I've got to say, Lee, you've built multiple companies. You are in the VC space.
Yes.
But you have no gray hair. How is that even possible? I'm growing new gray hairs as we speak right now.
Well, I turn 34 next week, so I'm expecting that the gray hairs start coming from then. And if the camera zooms in really close, you'll see some of them. I promise they're there.
I remember telling you one of the things, when you first discovered MSPs, one of the things that made you think this actually is a place to build is that there's a lot of data.
Yes.
And data is what makes AI and advanced.
Yeah.
So before we kind of get further into this topic, tell us a little bit about zofiQ, what zofiQ does. Tell us about the role data plays in that. And in particular, because this is not just AI, but agentic AI, how agentic autonomous is it?
Yeah, it's a really, really great question. So data is at the core of everything we do. And what zofiQ is an AI automation platform for MSPs, right? That's the tagline of what it is. But that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Our entire lens on the world is that thinking about AI as a function of a workflow builder is the wrong way to think about it. The significant unlock of AI, the significant unlock of traditional machine learning that powers AI, of all these components, is that if you do it really, really well, you can flip the script on its head. And instead of saying you need people to go describe to an AI what sort of workflow you wanted to go execute on, you should actually allow the AI to build the workflows on its own. And what that means for customers is that instead of spending 6 months, 8 months, a year banging their head against a wall trying to build workflows with an LLM somewhere in the middle, you can actually let the AI build itself. And that's the core differentiator of zofiQ, is that at the core of what we build is a learning model that can build the workflows based upon historical data. And so you made this great point, Rich, which is data is at the core of everything we do. And if you want to build a truly agentic platform, data needs to be at the core of what you do, because it is, to a certain extent, a traditional machine learning problem that you're trying to solve for. You're trying to teach a robot without a physical body how to execute a task. And I believe that MSPs disproportionately, more than maybe any industry in the world, are sitting on a gold mine of data. I have this slide in a deck that I love to show MSPs when I do dinner with them. And I ask them, how much value do you think you're sitting on in your PSA in terms of data? People say $10,000, $50,000, $100,000. And I say every single person in the room, I think, is sitting on between $100,000 to $10 million worth of data in their PSA. And the reason why I say that is if you had to hire teams of people to go build all these labeled data sets that you need to train AI, right? There are literally multi-billion-dollar companies that are built around labeling data. MSPs are sitting on a treasure trove of labeled data, but until zofiQ, you couldn't actually unlock the value in that data. You could write workflows, but you couldn't actually make use of that data to train an AI. So that's a significant differentiator. And you asked another good question, which I think is super important, which is how agentic is this, right? For me, the hallmark of an AI agent has kind of three things to it in my mind. I think we still don't necessarily have a great definition of what it means to build an agentic platform, and everyone wants to call what they're doing agentic. But for me, there's three hallmarks to look at. So one, can the AI agents train on historical data, right? That's the first thing. Are they learning from labeled data sets? And yes, zofiQ learns from labeled data sets. Two, can they take autonomous action? So it's not you prompting it. It's not giving someone a script. It is actually being able to take autonomous action. And then the third component is that the agent can make use of tools, right? The RMM is a tool, the PSA is a tool, Meraki is a tool. It can make use of those tools, and it can leverage a combination of deterministic and non-deterministic logic that it has built based upon those data sets to go make use of those tools. And zofiQ does all three of those things, for our customers to onboard really quickly and then take over entire functions of their business, starting with triage and dispatch, all the way through to solving tickets, leveraging tools like, the RMM and beyond. So that's how we think about the platform.
Lee, I've never thought about the value of an MSP's data. As a former MSP, I always valued the customer's data and how we were protecting. Now, of course, MSPs, put your mask on first, the cabin loses pressure so you can help others. Like we maintain ourselves, but the way you've just described it is very, very interesting. It's like, wow, putting, dollarizing the value of that MSP's data, but not from a, what if you lost the data, but what can you do with the data? That is very interesting.
100%. And you can really think about this as, if you had to hire a room full of people to label data pairs, let's even just push to the side what you can do with that data to build proactivity in your business, to train AI agents to solve things before they become tickets. And that's a whole other rabbit hole to go down, which is that as MSPs mature leveraging AI, you'll see less and less tickets because issues will be solved at the edge.
Allowing the MSP to scale
exactly
efficiently and profitably.
And even if you don't think about any of those things, and all you think about is how much would I have to pay someone to go label 5 years worth of ticket data? How many people would that take, and how many hours, and how much would that cost you? And even at that base layer, you are sitting on hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of data.
So again, looking at it from the MSP's point of view, MSPs, I would say in general, have confidence and trust issues, but especially with their data.
Sure.
And especially with their customer information and things like that. So in the world of AI, I know that there is excitement, there's kind of, hope, but there's also this risk-averse perspective that MSPs have to operate under. So, from your perspective, with your organization, what would you tell these MSPs, right, to get them to look at things maybe a little bit differently, be a little bit open to try to get past that confidence and trust barrier?
Yeah. I think, so the first thing I always say is that the biggest risk is not doing something with it.
Right.
That's actually the biggest existential risk to your business. The second thing I would say is you do need to find mature partners to work with. Look, we're a very new vendor in this space. I recognize that. But we bring a pedigree to this, myself, my co-founders, the rest of our team, that we have built and scaled products in the past. And I think it's very, very important to work with vendors who understand compliance, security, take those things very seriously. And, some of our first customers were MSSPs and people who were building, who have CMMC compliant departments in their organization. And so for us, security and data protection was core to what we did from the beginning. Now, I think, to me, at the end of the day, AI is software. At the end of the day, it is just a new way of interacting with a computer. But at the end of the day, it's software. And so it's, to me, not that different than picking a software vendor. The one caveat that I give people, and look, at zofiQ, every single one of our customers has their own environment. It's multi-tenanted. We never cross-pollinate data. We host all of our own models. No data ever goes to OpenAI or to Microsoft or anything. We host everything ourselves. And I think that's really important, to be able to ask those types of questions of vendors. And if they can't give you those types of answers, if they're not going down the route of SOC 2, if they're not doing those things, is generally speaking a red flag. But again, I always bring it back to, the biggest risk is not doing anything. You just got to be smart in the way that you pick the vendors and people you work.
Yeah, I like what you said. I'm feeling a little bit better about it. A little bit better.
Hopefully, one MSP at a time.
Right. Rich?
So to help the MSPs in our audience get a more tangible grip on the ROI story here. So talk a little bit about some of the things that partners either are doing or can do with that data, how they can put it to work, the business impact that has, and how that compares to the cost.
Yeah. So we are not another tool that we want to be a cost center for MSPs. I think there are a lot of point solution AI products in this space that are cool, but it's pretty impossible for them ever to show the ROI. For us, because of our brand promise to our MSP partners, people are measuring ROI on day one. We set ourselves up for that on day one because we know we can deliver against it. And we think it's only fair that they measure us against that, because that's how you build a long-term company and that has staying power. So, there are, 4 immediate use cases that MSPs are using us for today. So the first one is this one that everyone talks about, but it's triage and dispatch, right? So, I was talking to our team this morning. We had a customer literally this week that went under an hour and a half, had his AI agents in their environment trained and took over the entire triage and dispatch process from end to end in an hour and a half. That's very, very powerful. The ROI there is very, very exciting. The second use case that we see is that after the AI triage and dispatch is done, we have AI agents that can take over and actually solve tickets from end to end. So let's take the example of a printer down issue, right? In the traditional world, that had to get triaged, assigned to a human. A human had to go get the device information, and then they had to go press a bunch of buttons to run a script, and maybe it took 25 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever the case was. We have a Ninja RMM agent, for example, that can run those scripting on the device and actually go remediate that from end to end. And so our top line number right now and our best performing MSP is about 25% of their ticket volume on a weekly basis is being handled entirely autonomously by AI agents. And then the third component is what we basically do when we can't solve a ticket. So if we can't solve a ticket entirely autonomously, we hand that off to a human, and you go human in the loop, HIL, right? And when you go human in the loop, we have an assistant that's directly integrates into ConnectWise Manage, into Autotask, into other PSAs. And as the technician is working in the ticket, it pulls them in all the relevant information they need. So it links the KB articles they need. It shows them how this ticket was solved historically. It tells them about blind spots they might have, that maybe they breached SLA with this customer already and they don't even know it. Or maybe that this customer has opened 15 of the same ticket in the past hour, and there's actually an underlying issue that because they're only looking at a ticket, they are being myopic. And so that's the third. And then the fourth is analytics. So one of the things that customers came to us and said is exactly this. We have all this data. What do we do with it? And so we built these AI agents for them that allow them to comb their data on a weekly or daily basis. And it basically writes reports for them on what they need to go execute and maybe where their blind spots are, more at a management level. So those are the 4 immediate use cases for us. Where we're really, really focused is on agents that solve tickets. That is our North Star. We believe that we can get to 75 and 80% and above of tickets that are being handled manually today should be handled by AI agents. And the role of someone who functions in an MSP is going to drastically change from reading a ticket and running a script to providing a really high level of service and guidance to their end customers.
And just very quickly, I mean, how long do you think it takes you to get to 80%?
I want to say about 24 months. I think we'll be there in 24 months. But I think that's potentially a conservative estimate depending on some of these significant unlocks we get in our products.
I'm going to say less than 24 months.
Okay.
That's because, I mean, the pace and the speed at which these tools are evolving and the intelligence that's being gathered from the data itself, like we can't comprehend it because we're thinking how a human would do it. Like you said, those 4 use cases really resonate with me. And, you made me think a little bit about, it's not only that we're lightening the load from those technicians so that they can be much more strategically valuable to the organization and the clients and things like that, but I also, just started thinking about, well, those tickets don't have to wait in a queue
Yes.
for the next technician.
As a matter of fact, and
Right.
sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
they don't even need to be tickets.
Yeah.
They don't even ever need to exist as a ticket.
Okay, blow our minds more. Go ahead.
So tickets today for MSPs are an indication that work needs to get done and there is something wrong.
Right.
Tickets in the future should be a historical record of what was done.
What was done.
You should not have to wait for a ticket to arise to go proactively do work. And what AI agents are really good at doing is reading telemetry data. Like, I can't read telemetry data. You guys can't. It's too much of it. But AI agents are really, really good at that. And so instead of having this, the old way of thinking, or maybe the traditional way of thinking, let's call it, where you're waiting for an incident to go execute on it, we actually think about these as just actions. You're just taking actions before there is even a ticket.
Right.
And so I think it is a reframing of what MSPs are doing for their customers. And the ticket still exists, but the ticket is a record versus a trigger.
So you were talking a minute ago, Lee, about, we don't want to be a cost center, we want to be a profit center. So here's one from me to you. So when I'm looking at working with MSPs and helping them, optimize their incident management process, optimize the way that their PSA is configured, integrate stuff, and then adding the cost of labor for every level of technician so that I can get a cost per ticket at the end of the day.
Yeah.
All of the tickets that zofiQ is addressing,
Yes.
other than the cost of zofiQ,
Yes.
are complete profit
Yes.
to the MSP.
Yeah.
So those don't cost zero.
Yes.
They are profiting the MSP.
And you can scale it infinitely. And what I really believe is that the MSP of the future looks like a software margin business. I think that's why you see so much private equity money funneling into the space of buying MSPs, because they know what I need, which is that the MSP of the future very much looks like a software margin business, and they want to buy those businesses.
So more like a SaaS valuation.
SaaS valuations, not services valuations. Yes.
Yeah.
And what I would layer onto that too is that one of the things I hear from MSPs all the time, look, people are nervous about AI. I understand that. I recognize this. This is probably the most, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I think this is the most fundamental change and shift in technology that we've seen since the advent of the computer. I truly believe that. People could tell me I'm wrong, but that's my lens and belief of the world. But what MSPs think that's going to do is erode their margins. They think that it is going to make them less valuable. I disagree entirely. There's something called Jevons paradox. Rich, like, this is something I'm sure that you read about all the time. I think you're going to hear that talked about ad nauseum in the next few months. Jevons paradox is based on a British economist's lens on the world about the steam engine and what it would do to the price of coal.
Yeah.
And basically they said, as steam engines become more efficient, the price of coal is going to fall through the floor. The shipping industry is going to die because you're going to have these super efficient ships that can do things. When you've got a more efficient steam engine, guess what happened? The shipping industry exploded and there was a huge demand for it. And I think the same exact thing is going to happen to MSPs. AI is the steam engine that allows them to infinitely scale their business. And there is going to be so much pull from MSPs to help the SMBs of the world deploy AI in their environments, to continue to grow their businesses, because technology is at the core of what everyone is doing. And so I really do believe that is not only, to your point, an increase in margin for them. I also think they're going to just see an increase in overall pull of end customers looking for MSP services.
That scale I was talking about.
100%.
So you're entering the market at a not an early phase, right? In having to build, we talked a little bit about, all kidding aside, right? This trust factor with contact with MSPs. So because AI now in the MSP world, is driving innovation and the tools that the MSPs are using without them even asking for it. They're seeing the value and they're adopting it, as they see fit. But are you now seeing an easier conversation with MSPs now that are willing to kind of just double down and adopt zofiQ more readily than you may have expected before?
Yeah, I think so. I actually would say the number one reason why people adopt our product is because they've talked to someone else that uses our product. That's the number one thing. I still think people are very AI skeptical, but when they talk to a partner of ours who's like, no, this is the real deal, and this is making a significant impact to our business. This is the core of our service desk today. That's the best sales team we have. So I still get a ton of pushback from people.
Okay, just checking.
But having said that, I was talking to one of our partners about this today. This time last year was like my first ever really MSP conference. We spent 18 months building the product in stealth with a bunch of MSP partners, but we weren't going to conferences. We were just heads down, learning about their businesses, learning about their problems, talking to them every day. So last year, this time was kind of my first big conference I went to. And I remember talking to people, and people told me to my face I was an idiot. Like, people literally like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. AI is a fad. It's not going anywhere. Those same people today have changed their tone. And to their credit, to I think people's credit, you learn new information, you change your opinion about the world, that's totally fine. So for sure, people's opinions have changed. The difference now is that everything is AI, right? So everything in the market is AI. And so you have an opposite problem, which is that there's so much noise, it's hard for MSPs to find the signal in that noise. And so just slapping AI on a product that's 10 years old and saying now it's AI, I'm not a huge fan of that, but right. We see a lot.
Well, that's the problem, right? There's bad AI out there too.
Rich. So you can answer this question in terms of zofiQ or just more generically.
Sure.
It's a given, given that this technology is new and applying it within a managed services practice is a new thing. It's a given. It's not going to all just go swimmingly.
Of course not.
So what kinds of hurdles, challenges, mistakes, lessons learned should people in our audience be prepared for and either know to prepare for or avoid?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think you're 100% right. It's nothing's ever going to go perfect. Nothing ever goes perfect with traditional software, right? And so I think some of the pitfalls I would caution people against, I see this all the time, is overzealously wanting to build things themselves. That's one thing I caution people against. I see this all the time and time again. Oh, we have someone on our team who knows AI, and it's like, great, they know how to use ChatGPT, awesome. And they are like, we're going to go build this ourselves. And they end up wasting 6 months, 8 months, 9 months, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to build something that never actually gets to where it's supposed to get to. If you think about building any kind of company, you need a lot of infrastructure around it to actually, go make it work properly. So that's the first one. The second thing, again, I'll come back to, I think the biggest mistake is not adopting AI. I go to sometimes these sales calls, and we'll do a webinar with the team or whatever it is, and I'll tell the CEO before the call, we'll have a private conversation. I'll say, look, I guarantee you that there are people in your organization exposing PII data into a publicly available model, and you don't know about it. They'll say, nope, we've trained our team. They're never going to do that. And I go to the room and I'm like, who here pastes tickets into ChatGPT? And half the room raises their hand. And so I think the other thing that I'd be really concerned about is what they call, shadow AI. I think John Harden from Auvik came up with that line. I love that line, the shadow AI line. Shadow AI is a real thing. You should be, very cognizant of the teams, putting data into publicly available models. That's very scary. And then the third thing I would say is when people have expectations that do not match reality. When people think that AI is magic, it kind of feels like magic, right? It kind of does. But people expect on day one, we're going to turn this on and our entire business is going to change overnight. Now, for some of our partners, that does happen. It really does. But I think there are others where it's like, hey, we need to spend some time to configure this to configure exactly for our environment. And guess what? AI is going to make mistakes. It's going to make mistakes. Always. It will make mistakes. You know what else makes mistakes? Humans. People make mistakes. And so I think treating AI as an employee of your organization and giving it the ability to operate and learn is fantastic. But you also have to understand that just like a human, AI is going to make mistakes too. And it's great. You can yell at it and it doesn't have very many feelings. Maybe it'll come back for us later, but yeah, that's how I think about it. So those are the things I typically caution people about.
Yeah, that governance over what's happening. You don't just let it run rampant. You have to monitor it and feed it.
Yeah. Crawl, walk, run, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, one of my favorite phrases attributed to the great author Isaac Asimov
Love it.
about computers. He said, I don't fear computers, I fear the lack of them.
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel that way a little bit about AI because I use it, every
Religiously.
all the time, and in a very, in a secure manner, right?
Of course.
So for partners that have, options like ConnectWise and other PSA platforms that are integrating some of these features and functionality into their platforms, what would you say to them when having the discussion about zofiQ versus some of these other solutions that are
Yeah.
That's okay.
I always tell them to just go look at the product. Like, I'm like, that the best sales team in the world for me is the competitor's product. Look, announcing roadmaps is great. Announcing things you're going to do in the future is great. What matters is delivering product to customers today. And I have this conversation with people all the time. Kaseya said they're going to do this, and ConnectWise said they're going to do this, and this company said they're going to do this. And I'm like, that's fantastic, but have they done it? And the answer is no. It's really hard. It's really, really hard to build these things. This is not simple products. You can get to 60% of the way there overnight. You can't do the last 40% overnight. That's very, very challenging, and that's core IP of what we do. And so I always tell people that they should look around. They should look at other offerings. They should talk to people and ask them experience about that. I believe we will always win on merit. And so, you know what? Maybe one day the bigger incumbents will get there, but I will always be 2 or 3 years ahead of them.
So one of the interesting things about zofiQ and tools like it to me is you could imagine companies like yours saying, you're not going to need an RMM again. You're not going to we're going to automate. But typically the model is more that you're sort of wrapping around this tool stack that an MSP has in place right now.
Yeah, and that's our lens on the world. Like, we do not believe that the PSA and RMM are going to disappear. I don't like that lens on the world, to be honest with you. I think the features and functionalities that are valuable in those products will change and morph over time, but I don't think that they're going to disappear. You still need a system of record. You still need a place to store data. You still need a place for agents to write notes. You still need a way to take actions against an endpoint and run scripts. Like, I don't think those things are going anywhere anytime soon. I think the way that they operate together, the way that they're integrated, the way that they make use of data will change. And that's our lens on the world, is that we believe each one of these things are a tool and that you should give the agents access to those tools. But we don't think for a long time we're going to replace those. I think even just from if you just think about it from a purely business perspective, there are a lot of PSAs that have shown up in the market and said, we're going to be an AI native PSA, right? Getting someone to switch off of a PSA is a very heavy lift. It's a really difficult prospect, and they have a ton of data locked away in there. Why force them to move away something that's working for them when you can augment and improve that existing infrastructure and systems? And so that's our lens on the world. Maybe we're right, maybe we're wrong, but we do not want to displace or replace those tools. We want to make them more efficient.
And so does your tool change the relationship an MSP has with those tools, though? Just in terms of like, I'm in them less often, or?
I think in the long run, yes. I think it changes. I don't think it makes them be in the tools less often. I think it makes their relationship with those tools different. And I think it maybe changes how they interact with those tools from a UI perspective. From a UI perspective, they may use them less. And I'll give you an example of this. We have our AI assistant that goes inside the PSA, right? And so because it's plugged into the RMM, if you want to go get device information on the ticket you're working on, well, you can do that in natural language in zofiQ, and you don't have to tab switch. It doesn't mean you're using the RMM less. It just means that the UI is different. And so that's our lens.
So yeah, the RMM is the collector of the telemetry. You need that to feed.
Yeah.
Right? So let me ask you this question, Lee, a little off script here, but
I love it. I love a good off script moment.
Yeah, so does Rich. Nancy learns when I just jump off the
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh no, it's so a lot of vendors are delivering services, solutions, products, applications, platforms, selling to MSPs, right? zofiQ is selling to MSPs.
Yes.
MSPs see AI as, okay, great, I'm using it now, but how can I monetize this
Yeah. For the
AI can I resell it or deliver some value to my end customer? So is there an idea, a whiteboard notation that you guys are talking about behind the scenes that says, hey, this is what we're going to do now, but there is a phase where we can really help the MSP make money with zofiQ?
So look, we get asked that by our existing partners, which is like, this is amazing.
How would I know?
How do I go sell this to our customers?
Right.
You know, I'm thinking of one MSP in particular. I talked about this recently, where they're like, this is amazing. You know, we work with really large banks, and they need an AI assistant to plug into all their data. How do I go do that for them? And so we are prepared for that eventuality. We do think that it will be something we help MSPs do in the near future. We think about these things all the time. I maybe have a bit of a divisive opinion on it.
Sure.
But my opinion is that if you are an MSP and you haven't been building RPA-style workflows for your end customer and haven't really understood their processes and don't have the setup and infrastructure to do that, you're going to have an equally hard time deploying AI and agentic AI in their environments. So that's the first part. The second part to it is I don't know yet how much of this for MSP end customers, for SMBs, is going to get solved at the application layer versus the services layer. And I don't think anyone really knows that yet. So if you think about, you know, our customer wants a workflow to automate email into billing, right? So I'll take something simple, you know, how much of that is going to get actually solved at the application layer of the billing software they're already using today? And now the MSP has made this huge investment in building out a workflow that becomes irrelevant, you know, in the near future. And so, and I think that, you know, the data would show, or maybe anecdotes would show, that we've seen a lot of MSPs that got super excited about selling AI services in their customers, only to have it to fall a little bit short, if I'm being totally honest with you. And so for us, we are focused on doing it in the business first versus on having them resell. And the last point I'll add there is, if you're going to go resell something, you should probably know it really, really well for your business too. So you might as well already start by doing it for yourself.
Quick follow-up then. So in your roadmap then, because, you know, MSPs, as you help them become more strategically valuable at freeing up this time, and they're having more of these strategic conversations, taking that conversation from the server room to the boardroom, if you will?
Yes, 100%.
Will you be able to reflect data that these MSPs can use in a VCIO, VCTO,
100%.
CISO capacity and have really strategic conversations and road mapping with their clients?
We have MSPs doing that today already, using zofiQ as a tool for preparing QBRs, for preparing these boardroom meetings. That is already happening in the platform today.
So one of the things, we're here at IT Nation Connect, one of the interesting things about the keynotes last night to me is that a lot of there was this sort of theme to a lot of what people were talking about, which is that AI is it's very new, it's moving incredibly rapidly.
Yes.
It's unfamiliar to everybody here, and yet people have to make decisions with potentially long-term implications, knowing that 2 months from now, everything could be different, right?
Exactly. It's a dice roll, 100%.
And so, I mean, this is obviously a challenge for the MSPs in our audience. I'm actually kind of curious, how do you, in terms of what you do, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, it's, you know what, honestly, it's just par for the course, I think, for everyone. So I would say for the MSPs, choosing vendors who you think are going to continually build and change and, adapt to the changing environments is really important. That's kind of back to my comment of like, don't build it in-house, because the thing that you build now, you're going to have to throw it and rebuild again. For us, we do that all the time. We have destroyed the core parts of our product time and time again and rebuilt them from the ground up as models change, as compute power changes, as new techniques and research papers come out onto the market that show us different and varying techniques. You have to be willing to say, hey, that's great, this is the approach we took, but we're only going to get so far with that. Let's throw it out and start again. And if you're not willing to do that, you are going to have a very, very bad time. Again, not even just in AI and just traditional software. Things are moving so fast right now. You have to be nimble and quick to be able to execute against that. And so I was talking with someone this about the other day, and they said, what do your sprint cycles look like? Do you do a month? Do you do 2 months? Do you do 2 weeks? I was like, we operate on a 1 week cycle. And we have a rule, and so we have a rule book at zofiQ that we have. And one of the rules is if you think something is taking too long, or you think something is the wrong approach, you cannot get sucked into the sunken cost fallacy. It is okay to take something and throw it out and start again. To exactly your point, because things are moving so fast.
You use the term nimble, agile comes to mind. So an organization like zofiQ that is more nimble and agile, what does that say in the conversation with MSPs that you're talking to about some of these larger, let's say much larger established brands that
Yes.
it's not their core competency, but they're kind of adding it on? Because what you just described, like week sprints,
Yeah.
that's pretty unheard of.
Yeah. Again, I think that's the advantage of being not an incumbent in this space and being a smaller business, is you can move quick. And I think one of our partners used this word to describe it. He said, you are our most dynamic vendor we've ever worked with. And I think being dynamic, especially now, is so important. And that's why I don't worry too much about the larger players and them announcing roadmap items, because I know it's going to take them so long to get there that by the time they get there, the technology will have already fundamentally changed and shifted, and they're not prepared to deal with that kind of development environment. And it's just a byproduct of being a large organization. If we were 500 people, we'd have the same issue too.
So just to wrap up quickly, the absolute least interesting question I'll ask for people in the audience who are curious, though, how does the pricing work on something?
Yeah. So we actually think about pricing against the same way an MSP would hire headcount. So we actually charge on a per agent basis. So if you say, hey, we want to hire a suite of agents that are going to go do all of our knock tickets, well, we basically look at it as how many tickets would you be able to handle as if you were hiring a human for that role. But hey, zofiQ works 24/7, 365, and so you get this ton of added benefit. And hey, we want to go hire an AI agent to do triage and dispatch. Okay, great, that you're going to go hire as if it was a role. I'm not super sold on consumption model-based pricing. I'm not super sold on outcome-based pricing yet. In particular, I find outcome-based pricing is really hard for finance departments to wrap their heads around. And so we started that way, and we had a bunch of CFOs, these big MSPs, be like, so what is the bill on a monthly basis? And I was like, well, we don't know yet. And we just kept getting stuck there. And so we said, let's bring it back to a more traditional pricing model where it's, as if you're hiring an employee, they just, they're called zofiQ in your PSA, but they operate as if it was a hiring an employee. So that's how we think about it today. And that will probably evolve as the business and market evolves.
So it occurs to me we've gone through this entire interview, and for the folks who are listening on audio, just so you know, zofiQ is spelled ZOFIQ.
That is correct.
The URL is
zofiQ.ai.
Okay, and so if folks in the audience want to get in touch with you, and to learn more about the product, they go to your website to get in touch with you.
Go to the website, or you can email me directly, Lee, Lee, at zofiQ.ai, and I will answer anyone who ever emails me.
Phenomenal. Lee Silverstone from zofiQ, thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, Eric and I are going to take a quick break here. When we come back on the other side, we're going to share some final thoughts about this conversation with Lee, have a little fun, wrap up the show. Stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back to part 3 of this episode of the MSP Chat Podcast, which is a special treat for folks who are enjoying the show on YouTube. So part 1 of the show was recorded at the Ingram Micro event, one particular location. Parts 2 and 3 were at the IT Nation. So if you're watching us on video, you don't really know segment to segment where the heck we're going to be. But we're back. We're in Orlando now for this final segment of this episode. And we do thank Lee Silverstone for joining us on the show. Super interesting conversation. It's interesting, Eric, you are a mind reader. You went exactly to where I was going towards the end of that conversation in terms of the contrast, and it is really kind of a contrast between the agility of an AI native, AI automation only startup and a much bigger company with a lot of products to think about and a lot of partners to think about. It's just harder for companies like that to move as fast as a zofiQ can. And, it reminds me, so obviously they talk a ton about AI for MSPs at Kaseya. They talk a ton about AI for MSPs at ConnectWise. They really don't at Enable. And I asked them about this about 6 months ago. What's your thinking about that? And what they told me specifically is we know we cannot move. We cannot be as agile as these younger companies can. And so our strategy is to partner really, really well with, they didn't name zofiQ specifically, but companies like zofiQ. And so it's an issue, and it doesn't lend itself to easy answers for an MSP in terms of, do you standardize with the same company you're getting the rest of your stack from, or go with a nimble company that's going to be on the cutting edge of the technology. But it is definitely a dynamic you got to consider.
And it's noble and refreshing that Enable doesn't do what we've seen others in the industry do, is kind of tack on a .ai on the end of a product or something and then go, oh, we've got AI too. They're being very, very clear about their approach to it and honest with their partners in the channel, which is great because, Rich, MSPs, they have a lot of options in who they choose to partner with to, help grow their businesses. And in the best relationships, this is no secret, but both parties need to care about each other's growth and that relationship. It's just like, when I was an MSP, I had some clients that could care less how good we were doing as a company, right? Those were the C, D, and F customers. And then we had some clients that were like, oh yeah, we want to make sure that, are you sure that's enough? Like I would have some clients tell me like, are you sure you're charging us enough? And then, after I said, oh yeah, we're good a couple times, I started to rethink it and go, you know what? Tell me a little bit more about what you're concerned about. And they go, let me go back and talk with my team. And then maybe, we made a little bit of prices. But I learned working with them, just like they learned working with us, how to be better together and take care of each other that way. And so the parallel for partnering with vendors and MSPs goes the same way, right? There has to be that symbiotic relationship where, and we've heard this on a couple of interviews recently, that rising tide lifts all boats mentality. So, I really appreciated the conversation with Lee. And what struck me, another differentiation, was his background and his team's background didn't even start in this space. So they're building a product from a best practices based perspective, from a software development organization, and don't have like these legacy tools or legacy groupthink that some larger vendors that are trying to catch up and deliver some of these services do. Plus they're nimble and agile, and I think that's a differentiator and a value driver for MSPs trying to choose who they want to partner with.
And it's interesting because we are seeing more and more of that. We had the co-founders of Titan on the show not too many weeks ago, and a sort of AI native MSP rollout. And they are not from the IT world or the services world. They're from the AI world. They're from Silicon Valley. And
highly recognized organizations in Silicon Valley.
Exactly.
That pedigree is impressive.
Yeah. So the managed services market has reached a point where it's become a magnet for very talented, very smart people from all over who are coming in with their expertise. And
that says something about the MSP market. This vertical that we're in, this community that we're in, like who knew, right? When we were trying to figure stuff out, making tools to make tools back in the old days, that it would become this leader of technology that attracts so much attention, not only from vendors and distributors, but from investors and PE firms that see the potential for growth and the value that MSPs and everybody in that whole supply chain deriving solutions to not only SMB customers, but now mid-market and enterprise through co-managed IT. This evolution that you and I have, been watching for many, many years has really, taken such a dramatic growth and influence position in the economy that I never thought about when I was just trying to close tickets with my team back in the day.
It has been a remarkable journey for sure. And this is as appropriate a place as I can think of to be talking about that, because ConnectWise is one of those companies that was there at the creation. So, yeah, incredible story. And it leaves us with time for just one last thing, ladies and gentlemen. Eric, how would you rate your parallel parking skills?
Let's just say, Rich, when they started installing rear view cameras in automobiles, I was very, very happy because, yeah, I'm not that skilled at just using mirrors to back up and park in parallel spaces.
I would say pretty much the same thing of myself, which means neither one of us is ever going to be a contestant in the parallel parking championship contest. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, once a year in Pittsburgh, there is a contest where people can compete to be the world champion in parallel parking. Now, I am looking at the formula that determines success, and I really can't quite make heads or tails of it. It's basically time in seconds times distance to the curb in centimeters divided by 7 for some reason or other that isn't explained here, multiplied by a positive or negative equalizer depending on vehicle length. I don't really know. But people do compete for this, and time in seconds is sort of a key variable there. The second place finisher came in like 18, 19 seconds. And so I'm never going to take this trophy home. I don't even know quite if I want to sit down in the stands and watch this particular contest.
You know, Rich, I think that the KPIs that MSPs measure are simpler than that. The second thought I have after reading that story is, boy, if we had to measure, the skills of our technicians in being able to parallel park, especially in very congested cities like New York and LA and things like that, probably wouldn't be that pretty. But the good news is, hopefully we're delivering services from a more remote perspective, and we're doing, less truck rolls, as we like to say.
Well, folks, that is all the time we've got for you this week on the MSP Chat Podcast. Here we'll be back in another week's time with another episode, and who knows, maybe we'll record the whole thing in one city. Let's see. Only way to find out is to tune in next week. Until then, I will remind you, as I always do, this is both a video and an audio podcast. So if you're listening to us right now, but you'd like to check us out on video, go to YouTube, look up MSP Chat. If you're watching us on YouTube, but you're into audio podcasts, go to Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever it is you get your audio podcasts, because you're going to find us there too. And wherever it is you find us, please subscribe, rate, review. It's going to help other people find and enjoy the show just like you do. This show is produced by the great Russ Johns. It is edited by the also great Riley Simpson. They're part of the team with us here at Channel Mastered. They can, of course, create a podcast for you if you'd like them to. But there is so much more that we do for our clients at Channel Mastered, where we help vendors build, grow, design, optimize MSP channel programs. You can learn all about all of that at our website, which is www.channelmastered.com. Channel Mastered has a sister organization called MSP Mastered. That's Eric working one-on-one with MSPs to help them grow and optimize their business. You can learn more about that at www.mspmastered.com. So once again, we thank you for joining us. We'll see you in a week. Until then, please remember, you just can't spell channel without MSP.